concentric rings of land and water, connected by navigable canals. The harbor was perpetually filled with ships, and the palace at the center was sheathed in precious metals. But the most compelling detail is the almost mythical metal that lined the city's walls and temples, orichalcum. Plato describes it as glowing with the red light of fire, only slightly less valuable than gold, and mined from the island itself. This single detail, a unique advanced alloy, is one of the keys to unlocking the technological reality behind the myth. Atlantis was more than just rich. It was technologically supreme and militarily dominant. Plato details how the Atlanteans became corrupted by their power, launching a campaign of conquest against the free nations of the Mediterranean, only to be stopped by a heroic, virtuous Athens. Their ultimate punishment was swift and divine. The gods, seeing their moral decay, brought judgment. The entire island was struck by violent earthquakes and floods, sinking into the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune. This is our historical blueprint, a colossal empire situated in the Atlantic, possessing an unknown glowing metal and destroyed by a sudden cataclysm over 11,000 years ago. Now, we begin the scientific and archaeological hunt. When searching for a civilization destroyed by a geological event, archaeologists always start with the most dramatic and evidence-rich sites. And for many, the closest thing to Atlantis we have ever found is the volcanic island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, in the Aegean Sea. The timeline may seem wrong, but the story of destruction is almost identical. Around 1600 BC, a colossal volcano erupted here, a catastrophic event known as the Minoan eruption. It was 4 times more powerful than the Krakatoa eruption of 1883. It literally blew the center out of the island, creating the magnificent crescent-shaped caldera we see today. Tsunamis generated by the collapse would have crashed across the Aegean, devastating coastal settlements for hundreds of miles. The eruption wiped out the flourishing Minoan civilization on the island and severely crippled their power base on nearby Crete. The Minoans were exactly the kind of highly advanced, seafaring and opulent culture that could fit the Atlantean description. They built complex palaces, controlled a vast trade network, and disappeared suddenly. Critically, the destruction perfectly mirrors Plato's account. A rich, highly advanced island civilization destroyed by earthquakes, floods, and fire, all in a single day. The discrepancy, of course, is the time frame. Plato claims 9,000 years before Solon, approximate 11,600 years ago. The Thera eruption was only about 3,600 years ago. The orichalcum angle. Interestingly, the Minoan civilization was renowned for its metallurgical skills. While they didn't have orichalcum, their advanced metalworking, particularly the use of copper alloys and fine gold, shows a mastery of craft. Could Plato, relying on heavily filtered oral tradition, have exaggerated a Minoan copper-gold alloy into a glowing mythical metal? The distance from Egypt to Greece and the reliance on memory could have easily transformed a powerful volcanic eruption into a divine sinking of an entire continent. The Thera hypothesis is compelling because it relies on a proven cataclysm, but we are still left with the huge geographical and chronological mismatch. It solves the how, but not the when or the where that Plato so definitively described beyond the Pillars of Hercules. To honor Plato's primary geographical marker, we must sail out into the Atlantic. The Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, remains the most logical starting point for any serious search. One of the most publicized and controversial theories places Atlantis near the Doñana National Park in southern Spain. This region, near Cadiz, is close to the strait and is geologically known for its unstable ground, often affected by seismic activity and tsunamis. Archaeologist Richard Freund claimed to have used satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar to identify submerged structures in the marshlands here, suggesting a memorial complex built by survivors of a coastal metropolis drowned by a massive tsunami. The timing? Around 800 to 900 BC. Still far too late for Plato's timeline, but geographically close. While compelling, many academics dismissed Freund's claims as sensationalism, pointing out the lack of definitive structural evidence. Another famous Atlantic contender lies far to the west, the Bimini Road. Found off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, this site consists of a 0.8-kilometer-long straight-line formation of rectangular limestone blocks submerged just 6 meters below the surface. To the casual eye, it looks exactly like a paved road or the top of a massive wall. Advocates argue that this must be a remnant of a huge harbor wall or quay, part of the Atlantean outpost destroyed during the last great sea level rise after the Ice Age. The stones are huge, uniform, and precisely aligned. But science offers a cold rebuttal. Geologists have rigorously tested the Bimini Road, concluding that the structure is a naturally occurring phenomenon known as beach rock. This formation happens when sand is cemented together by water and erosion, creating structures that often appear unnaturally straight due to natural fracturing patterns. The most recent and perhaps most promising geoarchaeological research points to the seabed itself, directly west of Gibraltar. Researchers have proposed that a massive underwater geological feature, perhaps an island or plateau, that was exposed during the last ice age's lower sea levels, could have been the basis for the myth. As the ice caps melted, the sea level rose rapidly, up to 120 meters, drowning massive coastal plains and any communities built there. A sudden, terrifying deluge, consistent with a sinking that happened around 12,000 years ago, a date astonishingly close to Plato's 9,000 years before Solon. This hypothesis resolves both the location and the time frame using verifiable geological science. To truly understand Atlantis, we must step back from the treasure hunt and consider the story's true function. Plato was not a historian, he was a philosopher. Was Atlantis simply a political allegory? The primary consensus among classical scholars is that Atlantis was Plato's ideal counter-state. He invented the militaristic, hubristic Atlantis, which was ultimately destroyed, to highlight the moral perfection of his idealized version of ancient Athens, which stood against it. The story served as a warning against excess, greed, and imperialism. In this view, searching for a physical city is like trying to find the real location of Mordor or Krypton. However, the persistent specificity of the details, especially the architecture and the metal, orichalcum, demands closer examination. The mystery of orichalcum. Plato's description of orichalcum, glowing, fire-colored, mined on the island and secondary only to gold, has led to two major scientific theories. A natural alloy. The word orichalcum means mountain copper in Greek. It's highly probable it refers to a type of natural brass or copper-zinc alloy. But pure brass requires zinc, which is difficult to extract, suggesting advanced metallurgy. However, a simpler version, Corinthian bronze, known for its reddish tint, might be the origin. The scientific discovery. In 2015, divers exploring a 2,600-year-old shipwreck off the coast of Sicily found 39 ingots of a mysterious metal. Tests revealed this metal was an alloy of copper, zinc, nickel, and iron. Scientists immediately speculated, could this be a real-world version of orichalcum? Although historically late, the unique composition and reddish gold color match Plato's description of a metal that flashed with fire. This discovery confirms that the ancients were indeed capable of producing complex, unique alloys that matched the mythical descriptions. If orichalcum was a real technologically advanced alloy, it suggests the core of the myth came from a real civilization with metallurgical skills far beyond its neighbors. But the name and the story were likely adapted by Plato for his philosophical lesson. Beyond the well-worn paths of the Aegean and the Atlantic lie the true wild cards, the theories that challenge our entire understanding of history. The Antarctica theory. This is the most extreme hypothesis. It relies on the infamous Piri Reis map, a 16th century Ottoman chart that supposedly depicts Antarctica's coastline without ice. Proponents argue that this map, allegedly based on much older source material, proves the existence of a high civilization, Atlantis, capable of global mapping before the end of the last ice age. This civilization must have mapped the southern continent when it was still partially ice-free over 12,000 years ago, fitting Plato's timeline perfectly. However, geological evidence overwhelmingly confirms Antarctica has been covered in ice for millions of years, and critics say the Piri Reis coastline is merely a misinterpretation of South America's topography. The Black Sea flood hypothesis. Another strong candidate for the source of the flood myth lies in the Black Sea. Around 5600 BC, a massive deluge occurred when the rising global sea level breached the Bosporus Strait. The Black Sea Basin, which was previously a freshwater lake, was violently flooded by the salt waters of the Mediterranean, raising the water level by hundreds of feet and displacing countless thousands of early human settlers along the shore. This terrifying, irreversible event could have been the geological trauma that created the primordial global myth of a great flood that drowned the world, a myth later borrowed and refined by the Egyptians and ultimately Plato. The cosmic impact hypothesis. Finally, what if the cataclysm that destroyed Atlantis was not volcanic or seismic, but cosmic? The Young Dryas event, a sudden return to near Ice Age conditions globally around 10,800 BC, aligns almost perfectly with Plato's 9,000-year timeline. One controversial theory suggests this climate shift was caused by a comet or meteor shower striking the North American ice sheet, triggering global catastrophe, tsunamis, and widespread devastation that could have wiped out an advanced coastal civilization. This theory provides a single, massive, geographically ambiguous event to explain the simultaneous destruction of a huge empire. So, where is the real Atlantis? After searching the oceans, climbing the volcanoes, and questioning the philosophers, the truth remains elusive. We are left with a spectrum of probability. Atlantis is likely not a single city covered in a glass dome waiting to be found. It is an extraordinary convergence of reality and myth. The core story is likely a fusion of actual events, the rapid sea level rise that drowned coastal plains west of Gibraltar around 12,000 years ago, combined with the memory of a spectacular singular event like the Minoan eruption at Thera, all channeled and perfected by Plato's genius into a powerful philosophical narrative. The mystery of Atlantis endures because it speaks to a primal fear that all our monumental achievements, our science, our culture, our technology, are but temporary. A single day, a single wave, or a single lapse in moral judgment is all it takes for the greatest civilization the world has ever known to vanish into the deep. The search for Atlantis isn't about finding sunken gold. It's about finding the lost part of ourselves, a high watermark of human potential, and the eternal cautionary tale about the fragility of civilization.